Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. In this video, we are going to be covering GitHub Actions. Now you might be asking, well, what is GitHub Actions? Well, right now I am inside of the GitHub Actions webpage, and right away it's telling us that GitHub Actions is a way to automate our workflow. So, for example, let's say I had a repository hosted on GitHub, and this repository has a main branch. So over here we have this main branch. Now let's say I want to make some changes onto this repository. Well, what do I typically do? Well, I create a feature branch, and I call this branch whatever it is that I want. Now inside of this feature branch, I'm going to go ahead and make all of the changes. Once I am satisfied with all of the changes, what do I want to do? Well, I want to merge this feature branch into the main branch. So what do? Well, I create a pull request on GitHub. Now, once I create a pull request, there's a few jobs that I want to do to ensure that this feature branch over here is working correctly and isn't going to introduce any breaking changes. So for example, for each pull request, I want to ensure that the build is successful and all of our tests are passing. So I want to do these two jobs every single time I create a pull request. Now this right here, if I were not to use GitHub Actions, it would be a manual process. So for example, right here I have this application right over here, this nest application. You do not need to know any nest, but we have to work with a application in order to work with GitHub Actions. And let's say I created a branch and now I want to create a pull request. Well, before every single pull request, I would have to manually go to this terminal and then run npm run build to ensure that the build works. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and run an npm run build, and now you can see that it is running, and you're double checking, etc. And then you can see it's taking a little bit of time, which is pretty tedious. And now you can see, okay, the build is working. Now what I can do here is also do an npm run test to ensure that all of our tests are passing. So we can go over here. Now you can see our tests are running, and let's just give it some time. And there we go. All of our tests are passing. But you can see that this is actually a manual process. This is a workflow. These are some jobs that we need to do as soon as we make a pull request. However, we are doing them manually. Now, GitHub Actions is going to be a way to automate this. So anytime we create a pull request, it is automatically going to build our application and ensure that the build is successful. And we can also specify that we want it to run all of the tests. So again, this is going to be a way to automate this tedious process. Now, we can also, let's say we're happy with our pull request and we want to merge it into the main branch. Well, once we merge it into the main branch, let's say we're using Docker to host our application. So what we want to do is we want to build our Docker image, and what we want to do is also push that Docker image into DockerHub. Again, you do not need to know anything about Docker. If this doesn't make any sense to you, that's a-okay. But now you got to understand, after I perform some other action, now merging this feature branch into the main branch, I want to perform these two jobs over here. I want to build my image as well as push it into DockerHub. Again, I can always do that manually. I can just do a command docker build, and then give it a tag of latharb. Again, you do not need to know any Docker, but you got to understand that this is a command that I am doing manually. So I can go ahead and build this Docker image manually. And then after it's done building, you can see it's taking its time. After it's done building, let me just close it off. You guys kind of get the point. I can just do a Docker push and then go ahead and push this into DockerHub. Now again, this is a manual process that we probably don't want to do because it just takes away a lot of engineering time. It is very error prone, and it's better to automate this. So that is exactly what we are going to do. We're going to learn how we can automate this process right over here, creating a feature branch pull request and automating these two things. And then every single time we merge it to main, we also want to automate these two things over here. So we're going to learn exactly how we can do that with GitHub Actions. So let's actually go ahead and do that in the next section. In order to get started with GitHub Actions, we need to have a repository on GitHub. Now, to learn GitHub Actions, in this tutorial, we are going to be utilizing a Node app repository on GitHub. So you do not need to know anything about Node. This is a typical Nest application, a boilerplate Nest Node application that I hosted here on GitHub, and I also added a Docker file. Now again, you do not need to know anything about Node, nor do you need to know anything about Docker in order to take this crash course. We just needed a repository. It could have been Python, Java, doesn't really matter. We're just going to utilize this to automate our workflow. So in order to do this, what we need to do, or what you need to do, is you need to somehow get this repository on your GitHub account. Now, if you're taking this crash course, I do expect you to know the basics of GitHub as well as Git. Some of these things I'm not going to be explaining. Now, in order to get this right over here into your GitHub account, just go ahead and fork it into your account. And for actually editing this stuff on your local machine, what I suggest is to go ahead and clone it into your local machine and open it up inside of a text editor. I actually went ahead and did that, and as you can see right over here, we have our wonderful text editor VS Code that is hosting our Nest application. Okay, so this is all it is that you need to do. Now let's go ahead and start adding some of these actions so we can automate these jobs. Now over here, once you go to this repository, you can see that there's this Actions tab right over here. So let's actually go ahead and click on it. And actually, let's go over here. Let's click on this Actions tab. And what do we want to do? Well, we want to add a new workflow. Now, right over here, these are some actions that you probably won't see. I was just testing around. But what we want to do is we want to create a new workflow. So what is a workflow? Well, let's remember what we want to do. So when we want to create a pull request, we want to run these two jobs. This right over here is a workflow. So it detects whenever we create a pull request and it runs these two jobs. So that's what we want to do. We want to create a new workflow. So let's go ahead and click on new workflow. And you can see here that we can actually pick the boilerplate action that is best suited for our application. So let's go over here and let's look for a boilerplate node application. So let's go here, and there we go. This is it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on configure here, and you can see that what it's going to do inside of this node app directory, it is going to create this .githubs folder and then a workflow folder, and then right here it's going to create a YAML file. And inside of this YAML file, it has a bunch of YAML code that is going to specify our workflow. Now, instead of actually doing that right in here, right inside of GitHub, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this whole thing, and I'm just going to cancel this process. I don't want to do this anymore. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right in here inside of our text editor where we cloned our application, and I am going to create a new directory. I'm going to create that .github directory, and then in here I'm going to create another directory, and this is going to be called the workflows directory. And then right in here we're going to create a YAML file that is going to describe what workflow we want to do. So what is this workflow? Well, once we make a pull request, we want to run the job of building. We also want to run the job of running our tests. So this is really an integration workflow. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to call this integration.yaml. The name of this can be whatever it is that you want. It doesn't matter, but well, I think you should name it something that you're actually doing. We're going to go ahead and paste all of this code, and then we're going to go ahead and start looking at it line by line. So the first thing over here is we have some comments. Let's actually just go ahead and get rid of those comments. Now the first thing here, we have this name, and then over here we're just describing what this integration or what this YAML file is called. Right now we can actually call this integration like so. Now, if you're unfamiliar with YAML, it's basically a bunch of key value pairs, and if we want to nest something inside of it, the indentation is very important. So over here we have this on block, and then inside of this on block we have this push block, and then inside of this push block we have this branch block right over here, and it's signified by the indentation. Now over here we have this name, we called it integration. Now what is this on block doing over here? Well, this is specifying when do we want to run these jobs. So again, let's go over here. We want to run these two jobs right over here when we create a pull request. Well, over here, we have this other jobs section where we specify our jobs, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But right over here, we're saying, okay, on, and then over here on pull request, and when we want to merge this pull request into the main branch, we want to run these jobs. And also, when we push this into our main branch and actually merge it into our main branch, we also want to run the jobs. So if we want, we could remove this because this isn't something that we specified over here. We can just very simply say on pull request, we want to run these jobs. But I think it's actually a good idea. Once we merge it, we also run the build as well as we run the test. So on these two actions, we want to run these jobs. Now over here, now we're specifying the jobs. So over here, we're saying jobs. And then over here, we have this build job. Now we can call this whatever it is that we want. However, I think we should leave it as build because this is a job that we want to execute. This is going to be a build job like so. So we can call this build like so. And then over here, we have this runs on. Now this action, this job has to run on a server. Now this server is not going to be hosted by you. It's going to be hosted by GitHub. Now we need to specify exactly what server that is. Well, we're specifying that it's going to be Ubuntu latest. So that's essentially what that means. Over here, this is a little bit more complicated. So let's go ahead and skip this for now. And let's go over here. So right here, we have our runs on, and then we have the steps. So these are the steps that we need to take in order to run this job correctly. So what is the first step? Well, the first step that we need to do is we need to check out into that branch. So let's remember what we're doing here. We're creating this main branch, and then we have this main branch over here, and then we're creating a new branch. So in order to test all of the changes in this branch, we need to check out into this new branch. And this is what we can actually do with this line of code right over here. So over here, we're saying uses, and then over here, there's this actions-checkout. Now, what is this? Where in the world is this coming from? Well, let's actually go over here to the actual GitHub Actions and all of the different repositories that it has. If you go over here and search for its repositories, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. Let's go over here, and I'm going to go ahead and search for checkout. So you can see GitHub Actions actually has this checkout directory or checkout repository that we can utilize. And all this repository does is give us the ability to check out into the branch we created our pull request in. So instead of reinventing the wheel, what we can very simply do is just use this in order to check out into our branch. So remember this right over here, actions-checkout. Well, that's what we're doing. We're going to the Actions GitHub account, and we're taking the checkout repository, and we're using that to check out into our branch. Well, what is the next thing that we're doing? Well, the next thing that we are doing is we want to set up Node in that Ubuntu server that we have created. Again, we are utilizing the Actions account. So if I go over here back to Actions, and then I search for setup, so you can see that there's a bunch of built-in repositories that are going to allow us to set up our server in multiple different languages. So if we were running a Ruby application, we would use setup Ruby. If we were running a Go application, we would utilize setup Go. However, we're running a Node application, so we're going to say setup Node. So we're going to go ahead and use this. Now over here, we need to also specify the different versions of Node that we want to use. So over here, we're saying Node version, and this is where this strategy comes into place. So this strategy allows us to specify multiple different Node versions. So if we want to ensure that our build and our tests are running successfully in multiple different Node versions, well, over here, we can put it inside of this array, and these steps are going to run for every single Node version, for Node version 12, Node version 14, as well as Node version 16. And that's right over here. This is where we are actually utilizing that right over here inside of this Node version block. And then over here, we're caching NPM, which is just a very basic way of managing our packages. So now we performed these steps, and we have performed these steps utilizing these outside repositories. But now what we want to do is we want to start, well, running things on our own application. In order to actually run something in our own application, we are going to be utilizing the run command right over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to remove this run block. And so what do we want to do here? Well, what we want to do, and let me just actually get rid of this. What we want to do is first we want to install all of our dependencies. So over here, what I'm going to say is I want to run npm I for npm install. And then what I want to do is I want to go ahead and run npm run build. And that's pretty much it. That's all it is that we need to do to get this workflow set up. Now, another thing that we need to do is actually specify the unit tests block. So let's actually go ahead and copy all of this here. I'm going to copy all of this in here, and still inside of this block, this jobs block, I'm going to go ahead and paste this in again. So over here, we have this build block, and right here, we have this other build block, and I'm going to change this to be called unit tests, like so. So unit tests. Now this is also going to run on Ubuntu. Let's also utilize this matrix. We still need to check out. We still need to set up Node. Now over here, let me fix this. It should be colon. Now over here, we want to do an npm install, but now what we want to do is an npm run test, like so. Okay, so that's pretty much all it is that we need to do to set up our action. And this is going to automate this process right over here. And so let's actually go ahead and give that a quick test. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up my integrated terminal, and I'm going to create a new branch. So I'm going to say git checkout -b. I'm going to say new GitHub Actions. That's what I'm going to call this branch. Now I'm going to go ahead and commit these changes. So let's go over here and say add GitHub Actions. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and push this off. So I'm going to push this into GitHub in order to create this pull request. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right over here, and you can see we have this new pull request. So over here, we can write a comment. You can just say add actions, whatever. Obviously, if this is a real application, you would be a little bit more descriptive. And now what we want to do is we want to create this pull request. So over here, we are creating this pull request. And if we went to the actions over here, you can see that we have this yellow thing that is happening. So this yellow thing right over here. And you can see that our actions are running. So if we go over here back to our application, we should have seen it. Maybe it's taking a bit of time to actually run the actions, but let's actually go back over here. So we can go over here, we can actually click on this, and we can see all of the different jobs that are going to be ran. So you can see we are running this build on all of these node versions. We're also running all of these unit tests on all of these node versions. And you can see step by step, they're being completed. So if you actually click on them, you can see that, okay, the first thing we're doing is we are checking out into a specific directory or a specific branch. Then what we're doing is we're running npm install, and then over here it's doing a health check, just checking that everything is a-okay. Now if anything failed, for example if the build failed, then the action would fail as well. Now over here you can see that we have our unit tests, and all of our unit tests are running and everything is passing. What I'm going to do here is just to show you an example of when everything fails. So let's go back to our pull request. You can see our pull request has this nice check mark saying that the actions went ahead and passed. So everything is a-okay. So all of the checks are okay. We can actually see them all right over here. And so let's go ahead and actually merge this into our master branch. So I'm going to go ahead and merge this pull request. And now if I were to go to this main directory, you can see here that we're also going to be running it, because remember, in here we've specified that we also want to run this anytime we push into main. So you can see that it is also running over here just to ensure the integrity of our application. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to move back to my main branch. So I'm going to do git checkout, and let's just do main. I'm going to pull all of the changes, and I'm going to create a new, let's create a new repository, or I keep saying repository, a new branch that is going to cause one of the tests to fail. So I'm going to say failed test. Okay. And then over here, let's go to the test, or let's go to source. Let's go to the controller. And then right over here, it's going to expect that the text that we get back is going to be hello world. I'm going to say goodbye world. Let's say I made a mistake and I said goodbye world right over here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and commit this. Let's say I thought I was fixing the test. So let's say fixed tests, but I actually was breaking them. And now I went ahead and I want to create this new pull request. So let's go ahead and create this new pull request. Now let's go over here and let's create this new pull request. And now you can see that if I were to go to the actions right over here, you can see that our actions are now running. So now what we're going to expect is actually all of our unit tests to fail. And now we can actually see that inside of here. So just wait a little bit. This shouldn't take a tremendous amount of time. You can see that the actions are still running. So just give it some time. It should, in a minute or so, start passing. If we want, we can always go to the details to see what steps they're at. So it seems everything is fine here. And there we go. You can see that now our unit tests are failing, because when a unit test fails, it's going to throw an error. And that's exactly what is happening. So it failed over here, so it doesn't even bother running the rest. Okay, so that is just an example of how our tests, or how GitHub Actions would be very useful, because now we can quickly track what has passed and what has failed by just utilizing this automated workflow. And what's nice is over here, it tells you exactly what went wrong and what unit tests throwed the exception. Now, the issue that we're having at this moment is, even though these tests have failed, we still have the ability to actually merge this pull request. So we actually might want to block this ability. So in order to do that, what we can do here is we can go to this repository, this node app repository, and then we can go to the settings of here. Now, right over here, what we can do is we can go to the branches directory. And over here, what we want to do is we want to add some branch protection rules. So I'm going to say here, add rule. Now over here, we're going to say we want to do this on the main branch. We can say that on the main branch, we require you to create a pull request, and you cannot absolutely merge it into the main branch without a pull request. Over here, we can also say that it requires approval. Because this is only me, I'm going to go ahead and dismiss that. Now over here, what we can also say is we require the checks to pass before merging. This is another thing that we probably do want to do. And what that will do is if any of the checks pass, whether the build or the unit test, we're actually not allowed to merge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and enter my password here. Let's confirm my password. And I'm going to apply this new change. So I'm going to go over here and say apply. So now we got this new change over here. So branch rule was set. So now let's go back over here, or let's go back to our node application, and let's go to these pull requests. And now if I try to merge this, well, I guess the merge still passes. I guess it still allows us to merge for some reason. And actually the reason is because I am the administrator. I am the owner of this GitHub account. However, if there are any collaborators, they are unable to merge this. So you can see here that we actually merged this failure. So let's actually go ahead now and maybe let's create a new branch over here. We're going to say get checkout. We're going to say successful test. And over here, we're going to change this to hello world again. Hello world, and we're going to go ahead and git add dot, git commit. This time we're going to go ahead and fix the tests, and then we're going to do a git push. And let's go over here. Let's go ahead and push that. Let's create this new pull request. And let's see where it is. Here it is. So let's go here, create the pull request. And let's just go ahead and merge that in. Okay. So that's pretty much all we have to do. Again, if you're not the owner and there's a bunch of collaborators, that's when we're going to actually apply those main rules. Okay, so that's pretty much all it is that we need to know for GitHub Actions. Now, what do we need to know? Well, let's talk about the other workflow. So the other workflow is when we actually merge this into main, we want to build a Docker image, and we also want to push this image into DockerHub. So let's actually go ahead and start working on this. So what we're going to do here, because this is a brand new workflow, let's actually go ahead and create a new pull request here. So I'm going to say, or a new branch. So I'm going to say git checkout, and I'm going to say that this is going to be, a release workflow. Release workflow. So over here, because this is a brand new workflow that's going to have a different action, we're going to create another YAML file, and we're going to call this release.yaml, like so. Now over here, it's going to copy a lot of the commands that we've already done here. So let's just go ahead and copy this. And let's paste it right over here inside of release workflow. So we're going to call this release. And we only want to run this when we are merging into our main branch. So I'm going to remove this pull request on right over here. And I'm going to call this job deploy. Deploy or release. Let's just call it release. Or you know what? Deploy is good. So we also want to run this on Ubuntu latest. Over here, let's actually remove this. We don't need this strategy anymore. Now over here, we need to specify these steps. Well, step number 1 is we want to check out into this branch. So that's the first step. Step number 2 is we don't really need to set up a node environment because we are not going to be working with this nest application. We're not going to be running any npm commands. We're not going to be doing any of that stuff. We just want to go ahead and build an image and push that to DockerHub. So what we're going to do is actually remove all of this. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say .run, and then we're going to say docker build, and then we're going to say dot, and then dash t, and then we are going to give our Docker image a name. We're going to tag it. I'm going to say lathe-harb, and then I'm going to say nest app like so. All right. Now what we need to do is, well, we have built our Docker image. We need to push it into DockerHub. So if you're unfamiliar with DockerHub, let's just go over here and let's go to DockerHub and let's go over here. So DockerHub is very similar to GitHub in that it allows us to host Docker images repositories. So we can host it in here, and then we can very simply utilize this to manage our servers. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to quickly create a brand new account. And I'll do that, and I'll see you guys in the next section when I'm all done this. So you guys can go ahead and do that if you want to follow along. So I went ahead and created a DockerHub account. Now what I can do here is I can go to this repositories section right over here, and I can create a new repository. Now I actually named myself lathe-harden. That's like a nickname that I give myself sometimes. So that's over here. We have that. And then over here, I'm going to create a new repository called nest application. And let's just make it public for now. So I'm going to go ahead and create this. Now you can see that I have this new repository. So now what I want to do is I want to start pushing this Docker image into this repository. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to build our Docker image, which we are doing. However, we have to tag it with the exact same name that we have here inside of DockerHub. So I'm actually going to change that a little bit. So instead of lathe-harb, I'm going to call it lathe-harden, and then over here dash nest app. Okay, so that's the very first step. The next step is we can't just go ahead and start pushing into any GitHub repository that we want. We need to log into this GitHub account. Now, how are we going to do that inside of CI? Well, if I went over here and clicked on account settings, and then I went all the way right over here. So in the security, you can see here that there's this access token card. So we can actually utilize this access token in order to log into this GitHub or DockerHub account from CI. So let's go over here and let's create a new token. You can give this a description. So I'm going to say GitHub Actions CI like so. We're going to give it read, write, and delete permissions. Now over here, this is going to be our username, and this is going to be our password. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this password. And what we can do now is very simply run. And this is the command that we need to run. So docker login -u, and then over here we specify our name, which is going to be our username, which is lathe-harden. Now the issue with this, if we actually try to do this, let's actually try to do this in the terminal right now. So if I went over here and I tried docker and then login and then -u lathe-harden, the issue with this is it's going to prompt us with the password. Now inside of CI, we actually cannot get a prompt nor respond to a prompt. So what we need to somehow do is echo this inside of CI. So over here, what we can actually do here is very simply say echo, and then we can specify the password like so. Then what we can do here is to continue on to the next command is once we have echoed it, we can say docker login -u, and then over here we can specify our username, which is Lath Harden. And then right over here, to specify that we want to utilize this password, over here, what we can just very simply say is --password and then stdn, like so. Now, putting these credentials inside of our file like so isn't the best idea. It is best to actually keep this as a secret. Now, how do we do that? Well, what we can do is we can go to our GitHub account over here. So let's go to our GitHub account. And what we can do here is we can go to Actions. And then inside of Actions, or maybe rather not Actions, over here we go to our settings. And then over here, we're going to go into the secrets. And then we're going to go over here and specify some action secrets. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a new repository secret for our GitHub Actions. So over here, what I'm going to say is I'm going to say the DockerHub password, I want it to be equal to this over here. Okay, now I can go ahead and add that secret. And I can also add another repository secret. And I'm going to say over here, DockerHub username. And over here, I'm going to grab my own username like so. I'm going to paste that in there like so. So we're going to go ahead and add that secret. So now by adding this repository secret, any action, we can actually get those secrets from any action that we run inside of this repository. Now, in order to actually utilize them inside of this file, all we really need to do is get rid of that secret, and then do $, then curly braces, and then close curly braces, close curly braces. And then all we need to do is say secrets dot, and then over here we can say DockerHub, and then underscore password. And then over here we can say DockerHub. My cat just spilled all my medication as I did this. Bad cat, bad kitty. Okay. And then over here, what we can do is secrets dot DockerHub. And then over here, we can say username. So this is going to allow us to log in. But now once we log in, and over here we have to specify that we want to run this command like so. Once we log in, then we want to run the final command, which is going to be docker push. We want to push the Lath Harden -nest app image that we just created. So that's all it is that we need to do. So let's go ahead and give this a try now. So let's get rid of that. Let's go over here and let's just do a git add dot, git commit, add release workflow. And then let's do a git push to push this new pull request. So let's go to our node app. We should have a new pull request. Let's go ahead and create this new pull request. And now what we want to do, and let's just make sure that the tests file, that's hello. Okay, so that should be fine. So you can see it's running all of these different jobs. We can wait for these jobs to pass, but I'm just going to go ahead and merge it anyways. So just confirm the merge. And now if we go to our actions, so now we're going to have this new workflow that is going to run. And this workflow is going to be the release. So right here we have this, which typically should run. And then we should also have our release, which is this right over here. And you can see that it is running. So over here, if I were to click on it, you can see all of the different things that it's doing. So now it's building the Docker image. So you can see it's doing that. This might take some time. Now, right over here, let's quickly go to DockerHub and let us go to the repository that we created. So I'm going to say DockerHub. And you can see here that nothing was ever pushed. So we never pushed anything. So once this is all done, we should see that a new image was pushed. So I'm going to stop the video. And once it's done, I'll be right back. So the workflow actually failed, and it failed in this step right over here. And there's actually two reasons why it failed. So first reason is that this should be one word like this. So --password -stdn. And then over here, inside of our secrets, if I went to go to our settings, and then I were to go to the secrets here, the action secrets, we actually called this Docker password rather than DockerHub password. We should have called it DockerHub password. But for now, what we need to do is we need to actually change this to DockerHub like so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here, just create a new branch. So do a git checkout -b, just say fix actions. Then I'm going to go ahead and push this off. So let's go ahead and push this off. And then let's go to our node application. Now we have this new pull request, or we should have a new pull request. Do we have a new pull request? Oh, well, we have to commit everything first. So let's go git add, git commit, say fix actions. And then let's do a git push. So now we should have a new pull request. So let's go over here. Let's create this new pull request. And let's go back to our actions. And now let's watch our actions over here. So this is the integration. What we want is we want the release. So let's just refresh that for a bit. This is an old release that was 6 minutes ago. Oh yeah, so what we need to do, of course, is actually to merge this pull request now in order to get the release action. So let's just go ahead and merge that, confirm. And now if we go back to our actions, we should have our release. So let's actually now just go ahead and wait for this to complete. You can see now everything is a-okay, everything ran. And now if I go to DockerHub, you can see that it was never pushed. But now if I refresh, let's just wait a little bit. Now you can see it was pushed a few seconds ago, and now we actually have a repository. So congrats, we are now able to fully automate this process by utilizing GitHub Actions. I hope you guys learned a lot.